Welcome to the latest Astley Media Project Positivity webcast. Today we're in conversation with Jay Samit. Jay is a serial entrepreneur and disruptor who's worked with everyone from the president to the Pope. Enjoy. Hi Jay, how are you doing?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
We find you in Los Angeles today, I believe.
Yeah, beautiful sunny day.
Yeah. I'm English, so I'm going to ask about the weather. What sort of temperatures are you enjoying there?
I would say in the way you do it, 37.
Wow.
So
Okay,
nice.
well, we hit 33 today here in the UK, where we are in the UK, and you know that's hot for us. So 37, wow. I don't know how you cope. Jay, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. I first became aware of you back in 2015, which was a couple of years after I left an amazing sort of 20-year career in journalism and decided to do something new. And I was 2 years in at that time, and things weren't going as well as I'd hoped. And I read the book Disrupt Yourself, and it just made me realize that actually what I was doing was okay, and it was okay for some things to go wrong and for some things to maybe pan out different to the way I thought they might. As a result of what's happened over these last few months, there are going to be a lot more people out there now like me on the brink of uncertainty. Assuming they haven't read the book yet, what advice would you give them?
So the reason I wrote Disrupt Yourself is exactly what you talked about. Every career, whether by choice or circumstance, is going to face disruption. And now we're seeing the greatest disruption of any of our lifetime. And it's funny, my book has suddenly come forefront, not only here, but it's now coming out in Icelandic and Polish and Urdu and Italian. I mean, everybody's getting disrupted. And what I realized, or why I wrote the book, is I started on the internet real early and in computers real early. When I say real early, 1978. And one day you wake up and dozens of friends have become billionaires and household names, and we're not smarter than anybody else. We're not better than anybody else. We didn't go to the right schools or have some posh background. We looked at the world differently. And everybody thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves. And that's where change starts. If you can change that annoying voice in your head that tells you that you can't or you won't or you're failing. And what people have to understand is failing is part of winning. You either win or you learn. A baby doesn't come out of the womb and say, I'm going to walk today. They stumble and they get up, and they stumble and they get up until they finally figure out how to do it. And starting a business is no different, or working in a big company is no different. But the pace of change today is faster than Darwinian rates. It's faster than people are used to absorbing. And that's either a negative or a positive. It all comes down to attitude. It's a positive when you realize big, giant companies, and I've had 350,000 employees. I've run giant companies. I ran EMI, your 100-year-old British company. And those companies can't turn on a dime. That's opportunity. You can find something new. They're busy fighting some other dinosaur, not paying attention to the little mammal scurrying around. But it comes down to, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, and I think was it Henry Ford who said that, I think, wasn't it, originally?
Correct.
Yeah.
And what I try to show in the book is nothing that you don't read and go, oh, that's common sense. That's common sense. It just spells it out in a way that you can have action and you can do something. And to give you an update from the book that I'm very excited about, I get lots of fan mail. I mean, I do this to help people. This isn't about making money. I've been blessed with an amazing career. But I get lots of fan mail, but I occasionally get an email from a millennial that says, your book's all motivational, but I could never do that. And that bugged the crap out of me. So I took a young kid from London who grew up on welfare. I mentored him 1 day a week for a year. I didn't introduce him to anybody, didn't tell him what business to start, and didn't give him any cash. And he was couch surfing, he had no place to live. He was basically homeless. And he went from homeless to self-made millionaire in that year. So I have a new book coming out in March called Future Proofing You, which synthesizes everything down to 12 truths that you need in a post-pandemic world to have a successful business. And I tell Vin's story so that you can see month by month, what did he do that's so impossible that you couldn't do the same?
I can't wait for that. I saw on Amazon actually the other day that it was due. I think it's out here a couple of months later next year in the UK. But yeah, I'll be fascinated to read that. And what I like about Disrupt Yourself is it's full of anecdotes. It's accessible. The little snippets in there. It's just a really engaging read.
Well, thank you. It's just when you work with the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates and all these household names, everybody thinks of them as, Elon Musk, these guys up on, Mount Olympus like Zeus. When you knew them when they didn't have any money, they're the same as everybody else. So I started realizing that business school doesn't teach this, and I have this unique perspective. I've run large companies like Sony. I just stepped down as vice chairman of Deloitte, do $44 billion a year. And I've sat in an empty room and done stuff like, why don't we start an auction? That became eBay. Why don't we start LinkedIn? All these things. And you notice a pattern, and that can be taught. And it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 90. You can still start anew. And I don't believe in reincarnation. I believe you got one shot here. And you can't live forever, but what you create in your lifetime can. The positive change you can have on the planet. And all that success is having problems. If you have problems and you're listening to this, congratulations, you're halfway there. Because if you have a problem and you solve it for 5 friends, you're popular. Solve it for 1 million people, you're rich. Solve it for 1 billion and you change the world. And so when you look at climate change or income inequality or whatever issue, you can solve it. You only need 2 things to be successful: insight and perseverance. Everything else can be hired. Every person listening to this podcast has written at least as much computer code as Steve Jobs, which is nothing. He created the first $1 trillion company and he didn't know how to write code. You can hire people to do that. You can hire people to do anything. And that's what most people don't learn. And culturally, the British, not knocking it, but having studied and having lived there and worked there, they have a fear of public humiliation. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to be embarrassed if this doesn't work. What will people say? You get offered to start your own company at a startup or go work for Google. You're going to go, people will be embarrassed if I have to explain where I work. Americans, as you can tell by the idiot we put in the White House, have no fear of public embarrassment. We come from, The Simpsons. If you watch The Simpsons, Homer gets a get-rich-quick scheme. It blows up and life goes on. And that's what people have to understand. And so I work with governments around the world to teach entrepreneurship because you can't have democracy without a middle class. And you can't have a middle class without entrepreneurs creating jobs. And that's why society's getting squeezed. And that's why I'm on this mission, whatever time I have left. And before I forget, if anybody's inspired to get started today, go to my website, jaysamit.com, JAYSAMIT.com, and there's a free 40-page workbook. So you can start on these exercises today. Because I've seen it. I did it with this kid to prove it. I put my whole life's career and reputation on the line, saying, what if he, and I took a millennial on purpose because they have this cultural negative stereotype that they're lazy, they want a trophy, they want this or that. And it's funny, not to give away some of the book, but 6 months into our experiment, Vin Clancy's the young man's name, he handed me a piece of paper. It's the notes that he wrote after our first meeting 6 months earlier, where he basically said, this old guy's full of BS, this is never going to work, but I got no other opportunity, so I'll act like I'll go along with it. And 6 months in, when he's already made $600,000, more money than generations of his family had ever seen. He could have flown back from LA to London without an airplane. That's how high he was. He was so excited.
That's brilliant. I can't wait through that. And that 40-page workbook is a great free resource. It really is, Jay.
Thank you.
Many decades of learning and experience have gone into producing that. I think one of the recurring messages from your book is that there isn't an industry or profession that cannot be disrupted. And surely that's got to be good news for someone setting out on a new path.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people, when Elon took over at Tesla, he called me in to be CMO, okay? And this is, you can look nowadays and go, oh, it's so obvious. But a guy to sit and say, I'm going to topple Ford and GM and Chrysler and Toyota and Nissan, and I'm going to start from scratch, and I'm not even going to make a regular vehicle. I'm going to go straight to self-driving, electric. It sounds crazy. Well, guess what? Every entrepreneur starts off as crazy. You have an idea that just seems so logical to you and the rest of the world doesn't get it. And it took me about 20 years of my career. I used to come out of meetings in big boardrooms where I was the young guy with a new idea. And I go, they don't get it. Why don't they get it? They're so stupid. They're da-da-da. And then I realized one day it's not their job to get it. They're already in the corner office. Whatever got them there, they still believe. Mm-hmm. It's your job to convince people living in the past to embrace the future. And the second you turn that around and you put the onus on you, the whole world opens up like clouds in a movie. And I've disrupted automotive, travel, hotels, finance, I mean, medical. My newest company that I'm really excited about, a company called Greenfield Robotics. The goal is, how do you take all the poisons out of our food? We put herbicides and pesticides on food to grow them, and we put in the maximum amount to kill critters, but just a little less to kill humans. How stupid is this? We intentionally poison our food. So, make a long story short, we realized that regenerative agriculture, which doesn't till the soil and keeps all the CO in so that you don't have the greenhouse gases going up, the single largest cause of greenhouse gases, 25% of them, is agriculture. So we can solve that and solve the poisons if there's just no weeds. Well, how do you get rid of weeds? Well, why not make a little robot? Think a Roomba can dust your house. So we made these little robots that go out like a herd of goats, and they clear a whole field, but they don't eat the plants. They don't eat the soy or the sorghum. They just go and take care of the weeds.
Amazing.
And you say, why didn't somebody else do it? Because the person that came to me with the idea was an engineer who'd worked for me when I was running Sony. And he grew up on a farm, got tired of the big city, went back to the farm, and couldn't figure out why people were stuck on these chemicals, but he had an engineering background. So every person listening has a unique life experience. And that gives you insight. Also, you're not that unique. Meaning the problems you're facing, so does everybody else. But if your experience can point to a new solution, that's all it takes. And there's always a new technology that somebody else spent billions creating that you can harness to do. If you're listening or watching this on your cell phone, 10 years ago when the smartphone came out, Apple didn't make any apps. One of the top 10 apps was a fart app because nobody knew what to do. Think of how many billion-dollar businesses have been built on the back of this. Well, in the next 2 years, your phone's never coming out of your pocket again. We're going to heads-up glasses. Everything's here. Your whole world's augmented. You don't remember where you parked your car? There's a line down the road. You go in Tesco and there's all those products and your doctor says you can't have sugar anymore. Show me the products with no sugar and everything else disappears. This isn't science fiction. Microsoft's a client, Apple's a client, Google's a client. I know what's coming out, but they're focused on winning this, owning the real estate. All those apps that we're going to live with, all those apps that we're going to look at, every waking hour will be augmented. That's for you to jump in and say, somebody else did the hard part. They're putting up the 5G network. They figured out edge computing. All of us are built on the shoulders of these giants that created all this just for the entrepreneur to work in and go, I'm going to solve one problem better than anybody else.
No, that's amazing, and again, resonates with everything you wrote about five years ago, Jay. And you also talk about visualization a lot. You know, if you're going to achieve that, if you know, Elon Musk, to achieve what he wanted to achieve, needed to sort of visualize himself being there, and that's really important to you.
When you talk to athletes, that's one of the things that they use for training. They see themselves on the podium at the Olympics. They see themselves in the victory, in the ring, whatever it might be, and they condition themselves for success. I'm not a tree-hugging hippie, but I looked at all the research that went into the power of positive thinking, and it's factual that when you're in a good mood, you light up the synaptic nerves and you're open. You'll do better sales, you'll have better relationships, you'll have better sex, everything in your life will be better. And if you want the proof, everybody works with that person, that Debbie Downer in the office that has a cloud over their head. Comes in every morning, oh, the traffic, oh, the weather, oh, the this, oh, the that. If you're in a negative mind space, you literally shut off. You wouldn't see opportunity if it was right in front of you. So by starting each day with 2 affirmations, today can be better than yesterday, and I have the power to make it so, you instantly set your mind open for positive experiences. So let me just tell you a brief one about the pandemic. So I've been in my house. I haven't been out of my house since March 10th. That's insane. I'm on the wrong side of 50. I'm asthmatic. I get COVID. I die. Pretty good motivation. But I didn't want to take this as a negative. I don't have a year of negativity. So I usually fly 100,000 miles a year. In January, I was in 4 continents and, you know, through 12 countries. So, I mean, this is my normal pattern. So for the first time in decades, I have a gift of time. How am I going to use this gift of time? I'll never get it again. And so one of my hobbies is I love to watercolor. I don't know if I'm good. I don't know if I'm bad. I do it for my own enjoyment and therapy. But I decided to show people the gift of time. I committed, I would paint 1 painting a day and put it up on social media, just for friends and readers and stuff. Next thing, you hear from art agents, you hear from galleries around the world. I now have a solo show coming up in New York. I don't get to attend. In October, I've been discovered as an artist.
Wow.
And I couldn't be happier. But that's the power of positive thinking.
Yeah, that's and I bet
Put
even
yourself
you,
out there.
yeah, I bet even you, Jay, didn't think that would happen to you.
Never in 1,000 million years. You know, now I will admit, I love museums, I love art. But on some modern art, there's been many a time in a museum I've gone like, I could paint that. I wouldn't, but I could paint that. And I had a friend who bought a canvas that was solid gray. Imagine you just dipped it in gray paint for $300,000. And I'm like, you're kidding me. No, this is a really important artist. I go, yeah, but that's just gray. So I'm a realist in my painting, but I comment on disruption. And the name of the show is Disrupting America. And it's really through art, seeing what's changing, what the impact of COVID, Black Lives Matter, technology, all the changes, but doing it in a way that's not in your face, but gets you to think about it. Because what I like about art is I only paint half the painting. The other half happens in your mind of what you bring to it, what you perceive. And that's been rewarding, hearing people's thoughts of what they got out of it, just like the book. So just by putting myself out there, good things happen. And that's the same for anybody. And it doesn't mean you won't have struggles. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. It doesn't mean you don't have to work your butt off. But those of you that have a job that you hate, you traded a day of your life for that job today. A day that you're never going to get back. And a day becomes a week, and a week becomes a year. And then you're sitting as a pensioner. And call up somebody in an old age home, call up an older relative and ask them this question. What do you regret about your life? And I can guarantee you it won't be the things they failed at. It'll be the things they failed to try.
Yeah, absolutely.
Live a life of no regrets.
Absolutely. And that's the reason we're talking, Jay. You know, I read your book, reread your book. You know, I know you're a busy man. I know you're a man of work who's worked for some massive organizations. And I thought, no, you know, I'd love to chat to Jay, but he's not going to say yes. And I rewatched your TED talk, actually, where you said all of the things you've just said. And I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I might feel a bit, you know, shunned if he says no or ignores me. And wow, you know, you came back within half an hour, I think, and here we are chatting. So
Yeah,
again,
I
an
mean,
example of
I
that.
tell the story in Disrupt Yourself. When I was a nobody sitting in a little office trying to do stuff that nobody ever heard of, I reached out to Bill Gates and said, Bill, I have an idea for this game that I want to put on a computer, but I need music. And would you write an introduction letter to David Geffen, the richest man in the music industry, the guy who signed the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt and John Lennon and all these other people. And so one billionaire that I didn't know wrote a letter to another billionaire that I didn't know to help me create my biggest seller. And then, you know, it just went on and on from there if you just put yourself out there. And then David liked the game so much, he says, I was playing it last night with my partner, Steven. He wants to meet you. And I'm like, oh, Steven Spielberg, sure, I think I can work that into my schedule. And you know, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's just been, you know, when you work with popes and presidents, you realize we're all the same. These are just people that put themselves out there. And that's really, history's about the dreamers and the stubborn.
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to say we can't let this conversation sort of end. It's not going to end just yet, but I was going to leave this to the end. But yeah, tell us about working for the president, working for the Pope. How did those things come
about? The Pope one was fascinating. One of the things that when I used to make software, video games, I required every employee to answer the helpline. Put in some hours, you know, don't offshore, because you'll learn what people couldn't understand, how they couldn't install, whatever it is. So I'm doing it one day, and the guy's name's Timothy, and while you have to reboot the computer, you got to do small talk while they're waiting. And he goes, I go, what do you do? He goes, I'm a father. I go, I'm a father too. He goes, no, I'm a father Jesuit. I go, oh, you have a computer? Like, I'm like, I can't. He goes, yeah, I'm head of IT for the Vatican. I'm like, the Vatican? Like, you don't think of this out, you know, Vatican's one of the world's largest banks. I mean, it's a giant institution. I go, well, as long as I've got you on, I have this idea. What if we do the history of Western music, the history of art, everything from the Vatican Library? Next thing you know, I'm with the Pope doing a press conference. Insane. I'm sitting at my desk one day, and my secretary comes to me and goes, the president's on the phone. So I've got a lot of fun friends. I figure, you know, somebody's, and this was Bill Clinton, you know, I figure somebody's putting me on. I don't know the president doing an Arkansas accent or whatever. And I made the president prove that he was the president. I'm like, this isn't the president. I mean, you know, you go to the White House, and that all came because I wrote an article that I believed that the internet could create equal access to knowledge and education. There was no internet in schools. No teacher knew how to use a computer. That's back in the 90s. And when the president of the United States says, okay, go do it, you say yes. And then when he says, and we don't have a single dollar federal funds, you go, okay, I'll find a way. And 18 months later, every classroom had a computer and an internet connection in the entire US without $1 taxpayer money. Big ideas are like a light to a moth. They will attract the best people out there. And so when I look back on these projects, the unknowns that I worked on these projects are now household names. So just to finish the story on the president. So we did a press conference of setting up a school and pulling the wires and all that stuff. And the presidential photographer's there. And a month later, you get this nice framed signed picture from the president. You're going to hang it on your wall forever. But I got a 3-shot, the president and I and this other guy. And I'm like really bummed. Like, I want to just, you know, it was my day. It was like, you know, I want to, you know, be proud of this thing. I'm like, but it's signed by the president. It's going to hang on my wall. And it's on my wall for years. And the other guy was an out-of-work guy who was a volunteer. And as years go by, someone goes, oh, you're friends with Eric Schmidt? He went on to become chairman of Google.
Wow. Wow. Unbelievable.
So you never know.
No, and I think it's not just the ideas, Jay. It's what emanates from you is that positivity and that energy.
Well, You know, it works. You know, I'm not an engineer. I'm not the smartest person you ever meet. I don't have any connections. I didn't come from it. My dad made sandwiches. And I just went out in the world and, you know, thought that the world could be better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a brilliant message. When I read the book, I had a wry smile, or reread the book rather, had a wry smile, because there's a chapter on pivoting, which is now the business buzzword post-COVID. Bearing in mind your book was published 5 years ago, do you think pivoting is something that companies have not done enough of in the past?
Well, everybody has to disrupt themselves. I mean, companies have to keep on changing. 3M is an interesting company. They mandate that 30% of their revenue has to come from a new product. So otherwise the CEO doesn't get that. So they force innovation. That's how a company that made mining boots ends up making Post-its. I mean, there's a bunch of steps in between, but it's that commitment to that. But yeah, most people are afraid of it. And here's let me explain pivoting in a way that people can grasp instantly. You start off with a business idea. Everybody listening that has an idea, I can tell you, your idea absolutely sucks. I don't even know you, and I'm positive. And I'm positive it sucks, because here's why. It's an obvious idea. But as you get into it, as you learn more, as you go further into the jungle than anybody ever went, you will uncover problems that other people haven't thought about because no one's gone that far. That's the problem to solve, not what you started with. So that pivot, you know, so many companies that we have. I'll end with one quick story. I know you know because it's in the book, but it's a great one. Before broadband, computer dating was already big. For young people, there was a world before swiping. You went on, you did computer dating, you emailed back and forth, la-di-da. Broadband comes, you can now do video. And so 3 guys sat down and said, oh my God, we're going to do a video site for dating where you can see the person, hear their accent, talk, I mean, have that chemistry. This is going to be huge. It's called Tune In, Hook Up. They built the perfect site and nothing. And the nothing was they didn't realize how horrible the people were that were putting up videos. The first video was a guy standing in the zoo in front of an elephant, you know, like trying to ask for a date. Like, how sexy is that, ladies? But they looked at the data, and this is the other subtext in my entire book. Data has no ego, it won't lie to you, it will solve all your problems. And they noticed that nobody wanted to date these people. Everybody wanted to show their friends how awful these people were. So they shared the videos. So 10 months in, they changed the name of Tune In Hook Up to YouTube and sold the company for a couple $2 billion without a penny in revenue. That's a pivot.
Yeah, yeah.
Twitter was a music startup. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah, which goes back to the beginning, really, talking about sort of, you know, failing your way to the top. Just because an idea doesn't work immediately, or just because it doesn't hit the right audience, doesn't mean it's a bad idea necessarily, does it?
Yep.
Jay, we've been asking everybody at the end of these sort of conversations what they've learned about themselves in the last few months. What have you learned about Jay since lockdown?
It really puts all your priorities in order. I mean, I have 2 young grandchildren, and they're at that age where 6 months is you're missing out on a whole lot of changes in personalities, and that kills me not being able to be with them. You know, I told you about painting. You know, that for me was a therapy to take at least my mind out of that I'm locked in and all that, and it opened up all these new doors. I mean, unbelievable. And you know, there's a good chance that I will be having a art show in the spring in London. So hopefully they'll be flying by then. But what I really learned is attitude changes everything. Yes, something was taken away from all of us. And I know some people are suffering way more than I am, and you're worried about where your next dollar comes from, or pound, and how you're going to make a living and all those things. I don't make light of that. But you are the solution to all your problems. There will always be disruption. There will be always an external influence that you weren't expecting. If life was predictable, it would be really boring. But you can make it through. And, you know, in the new book, one of the things that I didn't talk about so much in Disrupt Yourself that I realized is the importance of fear. That fear is a good thing. Fear is not a negative thing. And I explain how to harness fear. And more importantly, how to use the innate fears that others have to help you be more successful. But I'm struggling to understand how we politicized in this country a virus, and you know we're doing the worst in the world at dealing with this. So that's been frustrating. But so many trends that already existed in society were accelerated by this. People have talked about remote working since the 1970s. I, being in the startup world, have had virtual companies where each employee is in a different place in the world for years. Now, the big giant companies are realizing they can function without those huge edifices. And if you don't need to get to that giant headquarters with thousands of people, then you don't need to live in the city center. You don't even need to live in a city. You don't need to live in a first world nation. You don't have to wait till you're old to travel. You can do your job from Costa Rica. You can do your job from the Seychelles Islands. You can do your job anywhere on earth. So all the studies that I looked at, people that work from home actually work harder, work longer, and have 90% less turnover. Mm. So we're reshaping society right now. But now that I've told you the roadmap, and now that it's obvious, what are the new needs and solutions? So delivering food became a huge business during this thing. And delivering food used to be, you drove from this McDonald's to that person's house, that Kentucky Fried Chicken to that person's house. And what came up was the guy who created Uber created ghost kitchens. It's one kitchen in a cheap part of town that makes all your different restaurant foods. So you don't need all those locations. You don't need all the go. So all this innovation just keeps happening. It is such an exciting time. And I'm telling everybody here that the $1 trillion opportunity to jump into is the spatial reality, the augmented reality. It will come so fast and so big, and no one in the world is ahead of you right now. No one's in your space. So the worst thing that could happen to you is you go into space that a big company should have been in there, and then their CEO has to overpay and buy your startup. So you lose your company, but you get $1 billion. It tends to be fair.
Yeah, and if you look at all the things we've discussed, the fact that huge audiences are available to anybody now, not just huge publishers as it used to be in the old days. The fact you can work from anywhere, you don't need a huge building, you don't need lots of tech or technicians to run a business. All the stars are lining up, aren't they, for entrepreneurs these days?
Yeah, but here's the flip side. You used to, especially if you take the British Empire point of view, you used to have an advantage being in London. You had the center of banking, you had relationships, you could do all that. But if you can live anywhere, work anywhere, and reach all 6 billion people through your phone, that means you're also competing against somebody in India, somebody in Botswana, somebody anywhere. There's a company called 99 Designs. Are you familiar with it?
No.
So if you need a company logo, you need some artwork, you put up an amount. You say, I need a logo for my book cover. I want a book cover to do this, this, and this, and I'll pay $500. You could say pay $50, but maybe you only get 2 people respond. Say $1,000 and you get 1,000 responses, right? And then you pick the one that you want. And then I always would ask where these people were from. And all over. Now, some have a daytime job at a big ad agency somewhere, and they're moonlighting, make some money. One night, they sit for a couple hours on the computer, make $1,000. It's great. Some are kids in a third world country on a computer. Design creativity, last time I looked, wasn't an advantage to any culture, race, or location. So 99 Designs anonymized the creator and had the art speak for itself. So you can do videos, so every business can now do this. I can find somebody to edit a commercial and not know where they are. I can have somebody do this. And, Fiverr did it at the low end, thousands of gigs that you can get for $5. Parts of the world, $5 is worth somebody's time. So you now have more competition, but you also have more access to all the talents that you need when you need them, not to pay them for the days that you don't.
And that reminds me of the story you're telling in the book about the remaining dollar you had, which you spent on business cards, and where that took you.
Yeah. When I got out of school, Star Wars had just came out. That's how old I am. And I was blown away, as everybody was. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to make special effects in Hollywood movies. Oh, that would be the greatest thing to do. Couple problems. I didn't know anybody in Hollywood. I didn't know anything about special effects. And at that stage, I really didn't know much about computers. But that didn't stop me something. Well, how do you get in? How do you make this happen? So the first thing that I did was I printed business cards for my new special effects company, Jasmine Productions, Jay Samit and Spine. But I didn't make myself the head of the company, because who would believe a 21-year-old kid's the head of an important company? So I made myself in the sales department. And I went around and I hustled and I got some work on crappy little movies. You're not doing Star Wars off the bat. And then, okay, now I got this work. Guess I got to run an ad and hire people to know how to do it. And once you do that, boom, 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 you suddenly have, and I realized, well, I could do that in any field and do anything I want.
Yeah, that's brilliant. As you said, it's even more possible now compared to what it was like back in those days, with the global audience you've got.
100%. So, you just have to believe, not quit. You don't know how close you are to success. And when you get down, when you get worried, when you feel it's not working, just take a moment and look over your shoulder at how far you've come. Because most people don't appreciate how many steps that they've already done. You don't know how many steps it is to the finish line. No one does. But it'll happen. And it will never happen the way you planned. I only know one person, Reed Hopkins, who could plan so exactly. It's psychic. But I've seen this again and again. If you like my TED Talk, there's another speech that I did a graduation speech for a university in California, a commencement speech. 2,000 kids that wanted to go into Hollywood and the arts and stuff. And so I talk about all my friends that wanted to go in. And they're all household names now. And it's not like, oh, I just so happen to have the perfect friends in college. No, these were people that we were all had that energy and believed and weren't going to quit until we achieved. And every one of them achieved more than I did. I mean, they're just amazing people. And, you can raise your kids with that. Don't ask a child, what do you want to do when you grow up? What job do you want when you grow up? That's the dumbest thing in the world. What problem do you want to solve?
Yeah.
Get them taking ownership in the world and saying that they can be the solution.
Yeah. And that again is another recurring theme of your books and your talk is, if you can solve a problem for a lot of people, you've got a business.
Yep.
And I love the TED Talk, Jay. I really do. I must have watched it a dozen times. And there's one phrase that you utter in there that just sticks with me. And you said, you need to ask yourself, are you living life or paying bills until you die?
And that's what most people are doing. Most people get paid just enough not to quit, but not enough to care. Most people don't like their job, and yet they're sad when they lose their job. I mean, they spend the majority of their waking hours doing something that is a waste of their life. I don't understand that. Now, when I give the speech in India, okay, you got a few thousand more lives coming. Maybe you can sacrifice this one. You believe in reincarnation. I believe you got this one shot. Why not make it the greatest? And you're now seeing a self-made billionaire. Every 48 hours, there's a new billionaire. So what did you do the past 2 days, you slacker? I mean, I met Jack Ma in the 90s at a conference, and he was very memorable. And he was out trying to figure out what he wanted to do. He built Alibaba, one of the largest corporations in the world. First 5 years, he didn't, and this is a dot-com business. First 5 years, he didn't even have a computer.
No way.
He went down to an internet cafe. So it can be done with anything. Elon Musk wanted to prove that he could do it, and to take the risk out, he said, okay, if I can live for $30 for a month, if I can live on $1 a day, then easily I can take the risk to do this, because it can't be that hard to earn $1. And he lived for $1 a day in the US. Ate a lot of ramen noodles, but that showed him. And so rather than have an apartment, he slept on the floor of his office. He went to the Y to shower. He had his website up during the day, and then at night he would code on it, and he and his brother would just sleep on the floor. I don't know how many tens of billions he's worth now. It was funny, I talked about some of the net worth of billionaires in Disrupt You, and in writing the new book, I had to look up new stats. Boy, the rich really got richer in the last 5 years. In just the pandemic, Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, doubled his net worth. He was 100 billion to 200 billion in just the pandemic time. Wow. Let that sink in.
Wow. I see Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, has reached the billionaire status now as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, so that's as an employee. That's pretty unusual. But there's most of the millionaires in Silicon Valley didn't create anything. They just got equity as part of their job. And so, that's another way to do it, Find another way to be compensated other than hourly. Because here's the problem with hourly. Even if you're a lawyer or accountant, when you're not working, you're not making. So unless you want to work till the day you die, hourly wage makes you a wage slave. And I don't believe in slavery.
Love that. As with so much of what you say and do, Jay, I love it. It's been a great chat. Really enjoyed talking to you, and really appreciate you giving the time to us. You win the award, by the way, for the largest cup that anybody's ever had in one of these conversations.
I drink water like a fish.
Right. Yeah. I hope your art exhibition makes it over here. Love to see that.
Follow me on social media. I'll be promoting it. It's nice to have a second career. So
yeah. And again, proof was needed that you can achieve anything if you've got the energy, the attitude, and you just push that little bit harder.
Your podcast helps reinforce people. Motivation's like a shower; you need it every day.
Yeah, thank you. And also looking forward to the new book, Jay, Future Proofing: How to Create Opportunity, Maximize Wealth, and Control Your Own Destiny in an Uncertain World. So looking forward to seeing that one come out. Recommend anybody go to your website and look at the workbook that you can download for free. Check out Jay's TED Talk, which is one of the best TED Talks ever, in my opinion. I absolutely love it. Every second is a nugget. I hope you manage to get out of the house soon, Jay. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, and it'd be good to catch up again in a few months' time.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it again when I'm promoting the new book. Put on your calendar, February, March.
We'd love to. Jay,
keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Enjoy your day.